Hi, everyone. Here today with Alan Rosenberg from New Jersey Animal Observer and Aubrie Kavanaugh from No Kill Huntsville. I'm very excited about the subject today. We're talking about HASS, the Human Animal Support Services model that has been brought forth from American Pets Alive. We actually have, a lot of different thoughts on this today. I think that's a good thing. We need to look at these new models and both support and keep an eye on them if they're not actually going to do what we expect them to do. And we're going to hear very differing opinions today. I wanted to start with what I pulled from the website out there. One of the things, it's one of the last things I think on the main page and on the Human Animal Support Services page. We believe every animal who enters the shelter should receive urgent individualized treatment and care with the goal of a live outcome. It's much more broader than that. They're really looking at the human animal services bond and if that is actually going to improve sheltering. And then a quote from Kristen Hassan-Auerbach from Pima County Animal Services says, "A whole new world of companion animal services is within our reach. We can leave the past behind and build a new, better system for serving pets in need." And then Ellen Jefferson, Executive Director of American Pets Alive, which is one of the leaders supporting this model and forming it. "We know we can do so much better when it comes to getting stray pets home, keeping cats and dogs with their owners and getting sheltered pets to foster and adoptive homes faster." So with just a general idea that you should really probably go out to the site and look for yourself what you think of it. But we're going to find out what our panelists think of it today. So Alan, you've been looking at HASS. What do you think?
Well, all the quotes you mentioned there sound wonderful, David, and they're certainly things we would all support. But I think when we look at the HASS model, you have to kind of go back and look at how it was formed and what it's trying to do. So basically what the HASS model is doing is it's trying to carry forward the COVID-19 sheltering model, which was reserving animal shelter intake at animal shelters only for emergency cases. That meaning things like dangerous dog cases, severely injured animals, rabies cases, and things like that. And it seems that when you look at how this was developed, that was the fundamental goal of this. The goal was not to take in relatively healthy stray animals into the shelter, and the goal was to basically have the public find the original owners or new homes for those animals. And when you think about that, I think what was happening is they got some flack on what was happening were some high-profile incidents at shelters where healthy strays were not helped and the public was left to basically carry the bag. And I think when I look at this model, I think the model really needs to focus in on the no-kill equation programs of pet surrender prevention, proactive redemptions, as well as increased fostering. Because if HASS is all about we just don't want the shelter to have animals, which I think is the ultimate goal. And they're kind of making this program on the fly because they feel the political opportunity to do so because shelters are already not taking animals in during COVID. I think that's the wrong way to go about this. I think they need to kind of slow down and do this at some really high performing shelters only, to refine the program, to do it right, and then launch it as opposed to jumping the gun like they're doing now.
Okay, so they are doing a pilot. They have tier 1 and tier 2 pilots. Tier 1 pilots, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that
No, that's right.
the tier 1 pilots is the one, the tier 1 organizations are actually implementing that now, and the tier 2 are supposed to kind of follow them. They're not supposed to go there, or they're not going there full boat, or just grabbing pieces that they want. And then they're supposed to be actually collecting data to actually see how it works. So Aubrie, I know you've had other concerns too. What have you seen in the HASS model that you like or dislike?
Well, to echo what Alan has said, I really don't have any issue with any of the fundamental goals of the HASS model. I think it's great. Ultimately, at its core, it's more social services oriented in terms of figuring out, because we know that what happens to animals in shelters, people tend to think of them as animal problems when they're people problems. So it's very much focused on keeping them in existing homes or getting them back home so they don't end up in the shelter. So when you go on the website for HASS, I don't have any disagreement with anything that's there. I think it's great. I think my problem is that I think they're kind of jumping the gun. I mean, they talk about leaving a type of sheltering in the past, but the problem is so many shelters nationally are mired in the past. So I think that HASS would be good for shelters that already are considered no-kill, meaning that we don't destroy healthy and treatable animals. And HASS would really work to fine-tune some of those programs that already exist within the no-kill equation. And I think that we all agree that we all support the no-kill equation. That's what we at No-Kill Movement have promoted from the very beginning. And so when you look on the HASS website at what they focus on, a lot of it really is elements of the no-kill equation. It's proactive redemptions, which is getting animals back home. It's keeping animals in existing homes. It's partnerships, which is a reference to rescue groups. It's volunteers. So I feel like they've taken the elements of the no-kill equation and just kind of recrafted them with different language. And there's nothing wrong with that. If in Huntsville, we already have a very progressive animal shelter now that it's overcome the hurdle of making a cultural change. I think the HASS model may work good in Huntsville, Alabama, because the city has already made a commitment to saving the lives of animals. I do not think that the HASS model will work in places in Alabama where there's not even an animal shelter and there is no animal control officer. I mean, it's a terrible, I was trying to think of a good metaphor for this. It's like going out and buying solar panels and a tankless water heater when you don't even have a house. So I think that the HASS model may prove to work well in the pilot cities that they're working on. And don't get me wrong, I wish them well. I mean, I'm all about creative ideas and let's refine and hone and do everything to keep animals alive. But I feel like they're speeding off into this new future when there are so very many places nationally that are still catch and kill, where there's no money devoted toward animal shelters or animal welfare. In Alabama, the law still refers to the pound. I mean, the shelters exist simply to impound animals running loose or to quarantine animals who have bitten. So I wish them well. I just think, I'm not sure how much practical application we're going to have other than in shelters that are really already very progressive, when we recognize that a lot of places, animal shelters really are not shelters, they're disposal facilities.
Well, yeah, those are really good opinions. Actually, I do have a very similar concern that you had said, Aubrie, is that aggressive shelter is aggressive shelter. And until we change the attitude, the no-kill equation and the HASS model are actually, they're not useful, because you need to change the attitude of actual shelter management. So I can't disagree with you there. I think you both had really good things that you brought forth. What I am optimistic though. I'm optimistic that if some of them prove the model, just as we've used places like Austin County Lake and Fremont and others as examples of what can be accomplished, I'm hoping that they actually do some things that actually show what can be accomplished, and maybe we can use them as good examples to try to help management in other shelters take the chance and actually reach out there. I do apologize for the extra panelist that came in while Aubrie was talking, but this has been a great conversation. I'm looking forward.
David, could I just add one thing on there? One thing I just want to raise, one concern I have is that one concern I have is if regressive shelters adopt this model, there can be some really unintended consequences. So I think a lot of regressive shelters will do the not take in animals part and not do the progressive social services programs to responsibly do that. And I really fear that there could be situations where there's a well-publicized example of an animal turned away and something bad happens to that. And then PETA or some other anti-no-kill group says, look, all along we told you guys no-kill was about closed admission, therefore no-kill doesn't work. You have to go back to the old model of catch and kill. So I think we have to be very careful about that at regressive shelters, and that's a risk of this.
Yeah.
Well, let me round out with one last thing, just real quick, David. There are legal issues involved too. In Alabama, the pounds exist to impound animals running at large. So with all this focus on keeping animals out of the shelter, and like recently there was an issue with a shelter in California that if a Good Samaritan found an animal running loose, they had to make an appointment to turn that animal in. That's just ridiculous. In Alabama, we could not just say, oh no, we're not taking your animals, because that's why shelters exist legally. So we're looking at potentially in some states changing laws in order to implement this model. Keeping in mind, I realize it's a pilot. I realize they're just working on seeing what happens, but I think in many states there are bigger issues to overcome, not only culturally, but legally.
And actually, those are both really good points. I think, I don't know what you were saying was what I was pointing out before is when we have regressive shelters, there's nothing until we can actually change the attitude towards homeless pets in general before we can actually go into any positive direction. And then from the legal standpoint, actually that was talked about on at least one of the calls that they have on Monday mornings, which I think all of us have at least looked at recordings of, where they talked about that. There was someone said, you know, we can't do it because it's not legal, and that is an issue too, and that would mean changing laws like we have before with the Companion Animal Protection Act, which we know is very difficult, possible, and it has been done, but that would be very difficult, and then a lot of the HASS model will not work. Well, we're running out of time, so we're going to get off. It was great talking to both of you. This was a really good conversation, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.